Hi, today I'm just going to show you how we train the YOLO dataset for our robotics club, or how I did it. So, what we're using is the dataset, Google's Open Images version 5 dataset. So, version 5. So what you're going to want to do is download the data from there. So that takes about an hour, 2 hours on here. So if we go to downloads, we want the boxes one because this is set up to train with boxes, and so we use bounding boxes. If you were to make your own one, your own data set of images, you'd have to manually go through and annotate all the images to draw the boxes around, and that's a pain. So that's why we're using the Google's data set. They have other data sets, but version 5 is the latest. And if you want to see whether or not they've got the object that you're looking for, you can just choose the category down here. I'm not sure why it's not showing images at the moment, but yeah, so you can just have a look, and so that can be anything really. I don't know, sheep. What's something else? Lamp. Oh, they don't have lamps. That's interesting. But if I did light, they'd have different kinds of lights. Anyway. So once you've downloaded that, which will take an hour, we want to get the data from those images and put them into their own files. So at the moment I've got it setting up in starting again under robots from home. So starting again, and then we have get the data. So what this does is you put in the classes that we want. So in this case it's plastic bag, tin can and bottle. And then what this will do is this will open up and it will create the two, it will create the images file here and then the labels file there with all the images that we want. I won't run it now because it'll take an hour, as I said, an hour and a bit, depending on how many images we want to use. So we'll make those, and then what we want to do is we want to split the train and test data. I'll put train and train. It doesn't matter. So what this does is it goes through and it takes 90% of the data and it puts that into a train log. So that's here, and it just shows you where all the images are. Then we have the test log. And so the reason why you need the 10% separate is to check and make sure that your data is not, that the AI is not becoming too focused on this one example. Of the examples that you're given. So you don't want it to train really well on one data set but then not be able to match to another. So we've just got something there to check and make sure it's actually training for all instances rather than just a specific set that we're giving it. So once we've run that and we've split them up, let me see, I've got my list here of things to go through. Once we've split it, you're going to need to get darknet. So we're using the Alex AB fork because I've just found it's the one that's the most versatile and it's got other uses as well, rather than just a live feed. And he also fixes up some issues and makes training a little bit quicker. So we're going to use his fork. So you can clone it and then you just download and clone it, and then run make. So clone, and then when we're in here you run make, and then that will just set everything up for you. If there's any issues with will this open or is it going to run? There we go. If there's any issues with it, so at the moment we've got the GPU enabled, but you can fiddle around with these settings if we don't have enough memory. Sometimes it can help out a bit. But we're using OpenCV for this, so we've got to make sure that OpenCV is working and installed. At the moment it is, but if this is reset, then yeah. So what we need to do is, where is it? Then once we've done that and all the data's annotated, so we need to download the pre-trained model. So that's going to be, I think it's installed somewhere here. If not, it will be in the original Darkflow. Dark flow, starting again. No, okay. There should be a fault. We need to get the training data. Yeah, a pre-trained model, sorry. We're going to get a pre-trained model, and so for that you can get it from on the darknet website. PJ Ready. So he's already got a pre-trained model that you can get. If you scroll right the way down to training, you can see that there's the pre-trained file there. So that uses their system, and then that way it just makes the training faster because it's already got something that's based on. So we want the preset weights. So once you've downloaded that and put that into the file here, we can then go back to our separate bit, starting again with everything else. So from here what we want to do is we want to go into our data file here, and we want to state how many classes we have. And then once we've stated how many classes, just our train file here, and then our test file. So, and then just put down where they are there, and then where you can get them, and the names file. So our names file is just classics.names, and it just has a list of what we have. Make sure these are in the same order as what you put them in over here, because otherwise you'll have things being labelled wrong and it just becomes a mess. I mean, we don't want to pick up babies at the beach and put them in the bin rather than avoid them. Righty, so then once we've done that, we need to edit the config file. So this is one of the most important steps because it determines how the training will work itself. So over here we have the batch, so that's how many images it processes per batch. And then how many times it's subdivided. So we don't have much memory, so these settings I've found work the best, but you could try, so this is essentially every batch it's just testing one image, but if you wanted it to do 2 images, then you'd subdivide it and do 32, so it's subdivided 32 times, and so it'll do 2 images every time. So it speeds up, but this computer can't handle it. Then we have the resolution here. So a higher resolution will take longer to train and probably run out of memory, but it will pick up on things that are further away from the camera. Then everything else you can pretty much ignore. What's the next thing? I mean, you can fiddle with the learning rate and stuff, just have a play with it, but this is pretty much how I found it works the best. Then there's some augmentation things over here. So this changes so instead of just using all the images and only training with them once, the program can also rotate them as we go through, and then that will allow you to train with different angles, and then it can learn what things are when they're upside down and things like that. At the moment this is just set to 0 because it's faster, and because this takes 3-4 days to train, or to a week depending on how long you want to run it for. Then we have the number of iterations, and so a good rule for that is 2000 iterations multiplied by your how many classes you have. Yeah, so that's your max batches. And so, but the more you have, the more accurate it can get, but as time goes on there's less difference, so you kind of have to work out. So if I show you this loss diagram, see very early on in the training you've got these massive changes in the loss, so that's how far away the computers guess at what an image is, how far away it is from being correct. So the average loss is huge when you start, but very quickly drops. But then you want to get it as close to 0 as possible. Anyway, so back to, where was I? Too many things open. Right, back to here. So yeah, we can change that. So one of the other things that we need to do is, if you're using multiple classes, is have a look through, and on filters, you're going to need to do filters are just 3 multiplied by the number of classes you have plus 5. So in this case, I used 3 classes, so that's 8 by 3, which is 24. Right? Yeah, I can do math for once. And then classes, here you just want to write down that that's it. So you can see num is 9, and then num divided by 3 is just 1. No, 9 divided by 3 is 3. I cannot do math. This is why I like letters. Yep, so just go through and make sure all the classes are set out properly, because there's a few places where it is, and that will trip up the program and break everything, and then you won't know what's going on. So just make sure all your classes are the same all the way through. Then we get to the fun part, which is training. So what we want to do is, so I've copied this whole folder over into not darkflow, we want darknet, right? Darkflow is getting it darknet to work on using TensorFlow, but I've found that just using this, even though it's written in C, it works well enough. It's pretty easy to use anyway. So yeah, here's the convolutional weights that I was talking about that we need to download, and this is one of my final weights that I prepared earlier. So what we want to do is from here, to train it, you want to go /darknet detector train, right? So that's your key. That's the key command. But then we've got to say, okay, well, what do we want to train? What information are we going to use to train? So if I go back to here, so the information that we're using is our data file. So if you click on that, you can just copy that over. So there, your data, CFG file. So let's just say it's this one. And then you have your weight file. So the weight file that we're using is already in here. Right, and so then, yeah. Then one thing that you also need to add, which I don't have on the website, on the tutorials, this will just make it a little bit easier for later on, is to just put in a log file. So you go into training data, just create yourself a log file here, so plastic bag train log, and then from here you can have a look at this later on or partway through the training, and then just see about how much loss you have, and then that will give you an idea of how close you are to being complete. So what you want is, so this is I've plotted this, and that's how I came up with this image here. So if I go onto the log file, I don't know why I closed it. If you go onto log file, you can see at the start it's this is, yeah, but I don't think this one's a very good example because it's a bit broken. I didn't plot this specific one. But yeah, you can see the log file, and then you can have a look through there to see, you can use the plot train loss, and that will give you an idea of how close you are. However, you might want to tweak it a bit so it does the logarithmic graph a bit better, or transform it so it's a easier to read graph, because that's a little bit whack. One of the things that you can also do is to make it easier. So you put the path of the log file here, and then train. The way that I find it easiest to do, that will stop big headaches with running out of memory, is pressing Control Alt F1, which will take you out of the desktop. I can't do it at the moment because I'm recording this. But then running sudo service light dm stop, and then what that will do is that will stop other programs from using up your GPU in the background, because we need as much memory as we can, because most of the time these programs are run on like 11-12 gigs of VRAM, but we only have 4 to play with, so you have to then shut that down. Let me just get my notes back up. Right. When you're partway through training, you can, I'm pretty sure you can pause it, I can't remember how, but if you type rep, and then average, and then the path to your log file. What that will do is, so if I go log, then enter, then that will tell you what your average loss is and how quickly it's changing and how many images you process. And so this will just give you all the information that you need to see, hey, should I actually be continuing this training or not, or should I just stop? Am I done? Yep, so everything should be backed up to whatever file you put as your backup file. And then you can use these weights to train from if anything goes wrong, and then you can also play with them, trying different settings as you go through. Then once you've finished doing that, you can then test your weight file, and to do that you go from here, darknet detector demo, and then use the weight file that is it config then weight? Yeah. So use the same order that you had before. We had config, then weight file, and then you can then, if you've got demo, that will use a live camera, or you can put a video feed over the top. One place that you can find a lot of the commands in is Alex's Git, not subreddit, Git page. And then what that will do is you can see all the information here about, here are all the command lines things that you can use. So here's test for just an image or something like that. And threshold, that's also really important. So the default I believe is 0.5, but because we're using we don't train for very long and we don't have much power or much memory, you can generally get away with using a threshold of, start on a threshold of about 0.2 and then see, okay, where should I be from here? Do I need to be more accurate or less accurate? And then have a play with that. It's fiddly. You will make mistakes in doing this, and sometimes you'll find that, oh, I accidentally forgot to write down a class or something like that, and you've got to start again. So it will take a while and you will need patience. My advice is, because of each of these steps that I've gone through, because they take about an hour each, apart from the main training, that will take you a few days. So just make sure you've got other things to do, so you just come back, write a book, do one of the steps and then come back to it. Yeah, so good luck.